You know what? Before I get going, I want to say hello to our friend Anthony Reimer in Calgary, Alberta. Anthony really wanted to be here today. What I want everybody to stand up and turn around and wave at the camera to say hi to Anthony, all right? Hey, Anthony, how are you? See you soon. Okay. By the way, these bananas are my presentation remote here. Next slide. Previous slide. There we go. I built this years ago because I came here and was forced to use a Swedish keyboard for programming, and there are no square bracket keys on a Swedish keyboard. So these bananas are set up to be right square bracket and left square bracket, which conveniently go to the next slide. How about that? Now, I want to do something that I've always wanted to do. I just retired from Apple after 40 years. No, hang on. But I never got a chance to do what I want to do right now. People sometimes say that. I want to do the exact opposite of that. I want everyone to get their phone out. I want to hear all of your ringtones at the exact same time. Ringtones. I know you have them turned off. But let's turn them on, and let's turn them up to full blast and see what happens. All right? You want to go to Settings, Sounds and Haptics, pick a nice ringtone. Then I'm going to turn the volume all the way up, and I want to go 1, 2, 3, then I want to hear all the phones at the same time. Are you with me on this? No. Ringtones. Practicing, that's fine. I'll give you a second to practice here. Then I'm going to count you in, all right? I see some people need to select a non-default ringtone. All right, everybody ready? Got your ringtone, volume all the way up? I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to tap it, and we'll hear all the ringtones. This is an experiment. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh my God, that's so beautiful. Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you. That's awesome. Thank you. I always wanted to do that. All right, you can now put your phone back on silent and never have it ringtone again. Do you remember when people used to buy those? There was actually a market for ringtones. You would pay 99 cents for a song and then another 99 cents for 6 seconds of that song as a ringtone. Anyway, so I retired from Apple after 33 years. I was at Next before that. And most of the time I was a consulting engineer helping people, usually schools, build apps and learn about coding. There's my first badge from Next. There's my last badge from Apple. And this might be the session that Patrick was talking about. I'm not sure. I presented quite a few times at the Apple Developer Conference. This is one session I did. Tony's introducing me. I don't know why we don't have sound. I'll just say what was happening here. Tony's saying, Steve, come on out. And I'm saying, yeah, but they told us to wear the speaker shirts, and they were all out when I got here. They were all out of speaker shirts. What are we going to do? And then Tony says, oh, we got to get going. I mean, the presentation's about to start. Let's go. There's 300 people in the room, so time to start the presentation. And here, okay, there you go. Hook up the microphone. There you go. I don't know if that was the one that Tico saw, then he wanted me to come here, maybe. So anyway, I worked before that at Next. Everybody at Next had some kind of a Steve Jobs story. This is the end of my Steve Jobs story. I got an email from Steve Jobs after 3 weeks saying, great idea, thank you. It was the only message I ever got from Steve Jobs. I like leaving it to people's imagination what the great idea was. But that was pretty cool. Also, before that, I worked as a network manager at Indiana University, and UC Berkeley had put out a call for people to write open source code to contribute to remove all the old System 5 code so they can make BSD totally open source. And I volunteered. I wrote a couple of weird little command line utilities and sent them off to Berkeley, and they said, thank you very much. And a side effect of that is that if you dig way down into the legal notices on your phone, if you scroll down far enough, my name is on there, Steve Heyman of the Indiana University Computer Science Department. So thank you very much, thank you. Every phone in the world, how about that? But so long as we're going backwards, this is me in grade 8 when I learned programming. Here's our grade 8 class. The nerdiest person on the right, that would be me. This is my 8th grade teacher, Mr. Brown. I loved Mr. Brown. He just passed away. He was a great teacher. And we were busy doing math on slide rules. I had a cylindrical slide rule that was actually pretty awesome. But then Mr. Brown pulled out these things. This is my first exposure to programming. This is the Cardiac, the Cardboard Illustrated Aid to Computation. It's a product of AT&T that they sent around to schools to try to get you excited about coding. And of course, it wasn't a computer because in those days, If you wanted to use a computer, you had to get on a bus to go to where the computer was in the next town. But this was a good start at getting kids excited about coding. And I recently bought one of these on eBay. You can still find them cropping up occasionally. And it came with the teacher's manual, which I didn't see back in grade 8. But I took a look at the teacher's manual because there's a chapter in there on flowcharts. We're teaching kids about programming with this little cardboard simulator. Flowchart for repairing a flat tire. Well, that's pretty good. Everybody should know about that. But look how this starts. Look how they start the flowchart for repairing a flat tire. I think things have improved since then. I've been very lucky to be invited here to speak at MacSysAdmin. Honestly, this has been the highlight of my entire professional career, coming here to Sweden. And one of those highlights was that I used to get to talk to Alan Gordon about the status of Hans Island. Hans Island is this little island in between Canada and Greenland. That's Ellesmere Island of the Nunavut territory on the left, Greenland on the right. There's this inhospitable rock in the moment, and Canada and Denmark were at a very humorous war over this island because it's right in the middle of the channel. The Canadian Navy would go up there and leave a bottle of Canadian whiskey and a Canadian flag, and then the Danish Navy would come by and, I presume, drink the whiskey and replace it with some schnapps for the Canadians to find the next time. But you know what? We settled that war. Canada and Denmark peacefully settled that war, decided to divide the island in two evenly. So there's now an international border that runs right through that island. I think that means Canada gets to be part of the EU now. We have a border with Denmark, a land border with Denmark. I think it would be handy for Canada these days to be in the EU, if you all don't mind. And, but wait, hang on, let's make a deal. We're going to build a Tim Horton Donuts on our side, and you guys build Legoland on your side, and then we can develop this property. Anyway, that's my hope. So I was lucky to talk about a variety of different topics here at MacSysAdmin over the years. And I thought today it would be fun to kind of revisit and give you an update on this. So let's get right in. What's new in Applescript? Is it a new icon? All right, that's about it. That's the end of my talk. Thank you very much. Now I have time for 46 minutes of Q&A. Okay, Applescript is still there. It's still a functioning tool. It's embedded in shortcuts. I've still done a lot with Applescript, but unfortunately, Apple itself seems to be a little distracted and is not putting a lot of effort into Applescript these days. Also, unfortunately, two of the best tools ever for scripters, Script Debugger and UI Browser, their authors have retired. So these tools are no longer for sale, although the good news is you can download them from latenightsw.com. You can download a free version of these things. And I don't think anybody who coded an Applescript could have ever done anything without these tools. So I'm really grateful to Mark Aldred and Shane Stanley for Script Debugger and Bill Cheeseman for UI Browser, which have been fantastic tools to help me over the years. And I could have never done any of these other presentations without them. 2008, I was supposed to talk about this, about scripting for system administrators. That was the plan. I was going to talk about Automator, tell you about Automator. But something happened the night before I went on. The night before I went on, Apple decided that night to remove the non-disclosure agreement on the iOS SDK. So people have been writing iPhone apps. People were not allowed to talk about writing iPhone apps, including people from Apple. And that night they said, all right, you can talk about it. So I blew up that presentation, and I wrote my first iPhone app that I demonstrated to everybody here. It's an incredibly exciting app, as you can see. I kept a screen recording of it. That's it in the lower right corner. And it was basically 3 web pages for each day of the conference and 3 buttons across the bottom. That was the first app I ever got to build in front of people and demonstrate. So I've since taken that act on the road. I've probably done 500 iOS app programming sessions like this one, mostly at colleges and high schools. But that was the first one, so this is a special spot to me. So I was supposed to talk about Automator, so I owe you an Automator presentation because I kind of abandoned that one. All right, what's new in Automator? It also got a new icon. That's about it. It's pretty clear that Apple's automation energy is directed towards shortcuts these days. There's nothing happening with Automator. There's nothing happening with Applescript. They're still there. They still work. But not just shortcuts, but Apple is also pushing very heavily this framework called app intents. And the idea is to get developers to build app intents into their own applications. And once you've done that, your application shares things with the system. It shares an intent, which is, here are the things that I can do. It shares entities. These are the things I can operate on. And it shares queries. Here's a way you can ask me about what I can do. And once app intents is in place, shortcuts starts magically working with all the capabilities of an application. I think there must have been 14 sessions on app intents over the past 3 years at the developer conference. Shortcuts is gaining a lot of momentum as developers add these intents to their applications. So I think it's time for people to start learning about shortcuts. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it later. After I go through more of these exciting updates, I want to talk to you a little bit about shortcuts. The shortcuts editor is very frustrating, but the shortcuts technology is great and works across all the Apple platforms in a way that Applescript never did. All right, more exciting updates. The fantastic world of Objective-C, something I once talked to you about. It's still there, it's still going strong. Objective-C gets updated to work better and better with Swift. Still a lot of code written in Objective-C. I don't think many people are starting a new project in Objective-C these days, however. And you know, this was the genesis of my keyboard experiments here. Having to do Objective-C coding on a Swedish keyboard prompted me to build my own square bracket keys out of bananas here. And then you can eat your keyboard when you're done with the presentation, which is not possible with many other keyboards. I did a talk on regular expressions. A few people have come up to me this week and said that they enjoyed that talk. I can't really remember very much about it. I saved the slides. But I do want to show you one practical use for regular expressions and automation in an everyday problem. I firmly believe that we should all be using automation to solve problems that are meaningful to us, that help us with our jobs, that help us with our lives. Thing is, I'm retired now. So the thing that I spend more time worrying about is this stupid quartiles puzzle in Apple News. This is a little game in Apple News where you're trying to, every day you're trying to find words that are composed out of these various tiles. And, you know, their age, there's a word that's in there, and I could find another one, toad, T-O-A-D. Okay, this is me every morning in bed. I can't get out of bed until I've found all the words in the stupid puzzle. And you get more points for longer words. But of course, the whole time I'm thinking, I've got on my Mac this huge file of words. One of my all-time favorite files, user share dict word. Big file of 250,000 English words that's on every Mac out there. Couldn't we solve this with regular expressions? Aren't all the answers to quartiles somewhere in this Word file? If you typed a regular expression like that at the top, wouldn't that match all the answers? Well, let's go through that exciting regular expression. You start with an up arrow, meaning the beginning of the line, and then you start listing all of the characters on the quartiles separated by an OR bar to mean this, maybe AGE, maybe NL, maybe RY, maybe all these other letters. Repeated 1 to 4 times, because that's how quartiles works. You have 1, 2, 3, or 4 of these tiles, and then the end of the line. If you grepped for that in the Unix words file, you would find all the answers to this puzzle. And you could get on with your day. You know, you could find all these words here. Get on with your day. The thing is, I don't think that's good enough, because that still requires me to type a complex regular expression in terminal, and I don't have time for that. Well, I guess I do have time for that nowadays, but perhaps, couldn't this be automated somehow with shortcuts? I mean, I think shortcuts has what we need. Shortcuts on all the platforms has a screen capture action that will get a bitmap image of the screen, and shortcuts has an extract text action that will find the text in the previous image. And then shortcuts has some clumsy text manipulation actions where you could change these strings around to make them look like a regular expression. And then shortcuts has a match a regular expression against the body of text action. So maybe we could do that. So I have a shortcut that prompts me for a screen capture, so I then draw a screen around the thing, and then extracts the text, rearranges it into a regular expression, uses my first cut of this uses grep and the shell script action to actually look in the Unix file, but then that means I have to bring my Mac into bed first thing in the morning to do this puzzle if I want to do that. Wouldn't it be great, though, if you could make a portable version of this that worked on iOS as well? Well, one way would be to replace that shell action with an SSH action doing the same thing over to your Mac. You're laughing, but you know I did that, right? Yeah. But an even better action would be, oh, hang on, back up. An even better action would be to embed the actual list of words in the shortcut itself. So I've got a shortcut here that has a 200,000 line text item in it, with all the words in it, and then a match action that actually picks the matching tiles out of that. You're laughing, but this works. And I have a fancier version of this that actually works on all the different platforms. It's a bit of a challenge on the iPhone. On the Mac, you can do a screen capture and just draw a rectangle and say just this part. But on the iPad or the iPhone, you can only capture the entire screen, and then you have to do some idiotic manipulations to try to crop out just the part where the puzzle is. But anyway, I got the thing here that actually works. This is a recording of it in action. Let's see. I tap a button that triggers the shortcut, and I sit back and wait. And it does a screen capture, and then does all those other actions and consults the word list. And, oh, here's the answers. Gingerbread, valedictory. I can start typing those in here. Now, am I actually suggesting that you should cheat on word puzzles this way with the power of automation? Of course I am. Of course I'm suggesting that. Because Quartiles has high scores, and sometimes you're playing Josh Weisenbaker, who's pretty good, and you want to make sure that you beat him every day. He doesn't know. I hope he's not watching this video. He thinks I'm doing this for real every day. But I think it counts. I think it counts if you apply your scripting knowledge to solving real problems like this one here. I got an idea for you. When I was at Apple, we had an endless series of Zoom and WebEx meetings. And I would try to pay attention to these meetings, and sometimes, occasionally, somebody would say something interesting on the Zoom call, occasionally. And like, oh, geez, there was a good slide. I want to make a copy of that. And I would fumble around on my Mac to try to do a screen capture of just that piece of the Zoom call and put it in a file. But you know what, you can automate that too. So I've taken some of these ideas here, and I've built a tool that looks around for the biggest Zoom or WebEx window, and that's something you can do with shortcuts. Find me all the windows that belong to Zoom or WebEx. Find me the largest one. Capture it, which copies a bitmap of that window, and then save it to a note. So for the past 3 or 4 years of my career, I had a hotkey that did that. And I'd be watching a Zoom or a WebEx call, and I'd periodically type the hotkey, and it would make a note continuing to append screenshots of interesting things. This was the most fun, especially if the person that started the presentation said they did not want you to take any screenshots. That reminded me, oh, I got a tool that does that automatically. I don't think that counts. So little problems like this that can solve your everyday headaches. So I want to show you a couple more shortcut hacks, including one that's exploded in popularity recently because 9to5Mac wrote about it. I did not create this one, but I've been using it for a while. This is a magic URL. app-prefs : a bundle ID on iOS goes to the settings page for a specific app. You know how clumsy it is on your iPhone to go to settings and then apps, and here's 500 million apps, and I got to find this one. If you knew the bundle ID, you could go straight to that settings page. So that bundle ID would open the settings for mail. This bundle ID would open, this URL would open the settings for maps. This URL would open the settings for the local trams system here. I love the trams here, by the way. Especially the one that says angered. Because you think, why is it upset? What have I done? I've paid for it. Why is the tram so angry? But this works great for third-party apps too. Of course, the problem is you have to build that URL. Well, Shortcuts has what you need. Shortcuts has an action that says get the current app, and then Shortcuts has an open URL action where you can say I want to combine this phrase app-prefs : with the bundle identifier of the current app, plus you can trigger shortcuts from Control Center. You can go to Control Center and add a button that runs a specific shortcut. So if you've got a button like this all set up in Control Center, anytime you like and you want to go to settings in this app, swipe down, tap that button, and you're right over in the settings for whatever app you're actually looking at. This is terrific. I didn't invent this. This was published on Reddit about 9 months ago. It's recently got popular in other places, but you should totally try that one. So I have a couple of buttons on there. I gave it the settings gear icon. You can actually set icons for shortcuts like this. That one that looks like a puzzle piece, that's the Quartiles solver, also very important first thing in the morning. If you like, the QR code on the right will download that action. I'll just leave this up here for a second if you want to grab that. Although I think you could create it in less time than it would take to actually grab that. I'm going to put on my blog links to all these things. I have not, because I've been editing my presentation up until about 10 minutes ago, my blog isn't quite ready, but if you go to blog.heyman.net next week. Anyway. All right, a few more ideas, things you could do with shortcuts. One is that you can embed Swift code in a shortcut. On the Mac, you can have a run shell script action that has Swift code in it that will be compiled and executed every single time. And I'll tell you the main reason I wanted to do that is these stupid QR codes that people would show in a Zoom session while I'm sitting there on my Mac. How am I supposed to click on a QR code on my Mac? How am I supposed to do that? There's nothing built in that does that. On iOS, just tap on it, there it is. On the Mac, however, you could take a screenshot via the techniques we just discussed, and you could save that screenshot in a file, and you could then run a little bit of Swift code that would open that file and use core image functions to pick out the meaning of this QR code, and then output it as text, and then display it to people. So that looks like this. I'm going to actually try it here. I'm going to try this one live here. I'm taking my life in my hands. There's a QR code. Here I have up in the menu bar, I have a collection of shortcuts here. No, we don't want that. For this one, we want the capture and decode QR code. I want to run that one. And now I'll draw a little rectangle across this here, like that. Wait, oh, there it is. It figured out the URL to that one. That URL happens to be the URL of this shortcut. Oh, how meta is that? This is a URL that will download this shortcut for you. If you want a shortcut for your Mac that downloads QR codes, that decodes QR codes, there you go. This is only going to work if you have the developer tools installed on your machine, because part of the shortcut is user bin Swift, do all this code. A couple other good ones. What other ones have I got there? Just a second here. Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. How about you can't spell? This is Eric Dreyer's favorite action right here. It's a running gag between me and Eric. A long time ago, I decided anytime I fixed something around the house, I wanted to say, well, you can't spell handyman without heyman. And then I thought, well, I could automate that too. Oh my God, we got patterns and words and things here. What if we did Eric Dreyer? What phrases can we make out of that? There's a file on your Mac of very strange phrases. I don't know where it came from. It's from a dictionary of like 1904 or something. What can't we? Eric Dreyer. Oh, you can't spell garden huckleberry without Eric Dreyer. Or Eddie Current Break, whatever that is. So very, very handy thing to have. You know what they say, you can't spell garden huckleberry without Eric Dreyer. So there you go. This is serious. This is serious. We're solving serious everyday problems here. I was going to show you something that I watched yesterday's session on Swift Dialog, and that is just fantastic. What an amazing tool that is. So I don't even want to tell you about this, but you can fake up V-cards inside a text action and then get them to look like this when you do a choose. Well, you shouldn't do that. You should totally. And then I was going to tell you about advanced UIs by embedding Swift UI Swift code directly in an action. Don't do any of that. Just go and use Swift Dialog. I would love it if something like Swift Dialog came to iOS. That would be pretty cool. You know, maybe embedding it in shortcuts and let me design a little UI here and have that run. That would be pretty neat. So just use Swift Dialog. Forget those previous slides. I want to show you one other thing, network fetching. This might actually be genuinely useful. There is an action that will fetch contents from a URL, and you can pass fancy headers and so on to it. This is one of my favorite websites, icanhasdadjoke.com. It's a whole series of really, really bad jokes. And it has an API. If you fetch a particular URL and you pass a special I can take this off. Is that all right if I revert to using the keyboard rather than the bananas? Thank you. Oh, thank you. Yes, if you fetch a particular URL, you can pass it a header to say, do you want a plain text joke or a JSON format joke or the raw HTML, and it'll hand you back a joke. Well, let's make a shortcut out of this. Hang on. Let's make a shortcut out of this. There is an action that says, fetch the contents of a URL, and you can add headers, which is a nice way that you can decode all sorts of interesting, useful services like that. And we can pass that to an action that then prompts me, that speaks the joke out loud. That's great fun around the house, let me tell you. And then prompts with a menu. And a menu in shortcuts lets you do a whole bunch of other things if you chose this. So we're going to do this one live, because this is kind of stupid and fun. Let's see here. I want to, I'll go to the shortcuts editor and show you the actual thing here. Oh, there it is, thank you. Dad joke. It's in my menu bar, so it's in this folder. Let's edit this one rather than run it, just to show you how complex this shortcut actually is. So we're fetching a URL. We're actually going to loop 28 times, because why not? We're going to fetch a URL, then we're going to speak the joke, and then we're going to prompt for various things. So let's try this right here. Now, I don't think my audio is coming out of this Mac properly, but will you trust me that it actually spoke the joke out here? What did one wall say to the other wall? I'll meet you in the corner. Oh, tell me another one. I didn't write these jokes. You don't need to applaud. The shovel was a groundbreaking invention. Oh, say it in French. Why not? All right, there's a translate action in Shortcuts. You might as well translate these jokes directly to French. La pelle était une invention révolutionnaire. Oh, sacre bleu, très bien. But, you know, some of these jokes, though, might not be, they might not make sense. So it occurred to me this is an opportunity to use AI to actually explain jokes properly. So I'm going to add an option in here to this menu called I don't get it. I don't get it. And then that will add another little section down here where I'm going to add an AI model that will explain the joke. There's a use model action here, and we're going to tell it, why is this funny? And we're going to click the follow-up here so we have a chance to have a little dialogue with AI about why this joke is funny. Let's try it again here. Some people say the comedians who tell the one too many light bulb jokes burn out, but I don't get it. Oh, here we go. Here's the explanation from AI. The joke plays on multiple layers of puns and wordplay related to light bulbs and electricity. Hours of fun. Burnout, what? Not that bright. Oh, very good, very good. Let's try another one here. Don't buy flowers at a monastery because only you can prevent florist friars. Oh, God. I don't get it. See if I can explain puns. Oh, good. It plays on a pun involving the words florist and friar and forest. Oh, Smokey the Bear and the forest. Anyway, so far this is the only practical use I've found for Apple Intelligence on my Mac. But, so far, okay? So far, geez. I don't work there anymore. All right, back to pointless slides. Okay. All right, where were we here? Now, just a few other things about shortcuts. You can actually run them from URLs. You can click on a URL that actually runs a shortcut. You can run shortcuts from the command line. You can run from the menu bar, control center. You can run JavaScript in a shortcut via an incredibly convoluted method of actually typing some JavaScript and then embedding it in a URL and asking the system to open this URL, which evaluates. That's terrible. I'm hoping there'll be a proper run JavaScript action in there. And I'm going to regret this. Just a second here. There's no chance this will work properly, but let's see here. Here is a Keynote page, and I'm going to click this button here and modify this Keynote. Hang on. I got to get this out of the way. Just pretend you didn't see that. This is me. All right, here we go. We're going to modify a Keynote slide on the fly. Oh, really? Every time I click that button, it adds a dad joke, a different dad joke to the bottom of this slide. I don't get it. All right. Well, whoops. Then don't kill Keynote. Thanks, Eric. You threw me totally off, you garden huckleberry. Jeez. So that is a bug in Keynote that works. You're not supposed to be able to modify a slide while the presentation is running. That is a bug. But slides are supposed to be locked while the presentation is running. But it turns out the slide layout is not locked. The slide is locked, but not the slide layout. So you can be a Weisenheimer and get in there and change the slide layout and put a joke in there. I spoke to product marketing about this. I said, please don't fix that bug until I get to show it to people. So, all right, more updates. I did a whole session on quotation marks. There was a lot of fun because I wrote this tool a long time ago called Big Honking Text, and I showed it off at one of these events, and a couple of people from IKEA came up to me and said, we love Big Honking Text. We actually use it in all of our stores. And I said, well, that's amazing, because I wrote it sitting at an IKEA desk. It's the circle of life. Bart showed this yesterday. Much to my surprise, he mentioned this in his fantastic presentation. I may have to just go and open source this properly. I don't know. I talked to you about Swift starting in 2014. It's moving along fast. There's some great work happening with Swift on the server. If you're building Swift command line tools, you got to look at a thing called Argument Parser, which is an Apple package that parses command line arguments in a fantastic way. And I talked to you about Swift Playgrounds, and here's your update. It's not called Swift Playgrounds anymore. It's now just called Swift Playground. And Swift Playground is now something you can actually use to build apps. You can, on your iPad, build a complete app with Swift Playground. And this is an app I built on my iPad that tracks the location of the ISS and the Chinese space station. And you can take those and put them into Xcode if you want to do more debugging on it, but you can even submit them straight to the App Store from Swift Playground on the iPad, which is kind of neat. You can build an app totally without a Mac. This is the way. All right, Swift Playground. Oh, I got one more shortcut. Yeah, Swift Playgrounds are actually stored as .swiftpm packages, which means you can theoretically open them in Xcode and compile them. And there's a command line Xcode build tool that you can use to compile something and automatically install it on a totally different device. So there's my iPad and my iPhone. And I have a shortcut here. This is the most elaborate one I've come up with here that will take on my iPad the current thing, let me choose a device. You can't see it, but it's SSHing it over to a Mac and then compiling that playground on the Mac and installing it on the phone, all from one tap. So that, I worked really hard on that. I don't know that I will ever use it, but it was fun to build that. Anyway, once again on the general theme of building things that solve your own problems. 2017, I did a talk here on the history of text encodings where we covered a lot, all the way back to hieroglyphics. Quick refresher. What is Unicode? It's a list of code points. It's a list of characters and numbers. These are some code points and their numbers. Sometimes multiple Unicode code points result in a single symbol, like the Canadian flag. That's what Unicode says. What UTF-8 says is how do we actually store those things as bytes? These smaller numbered Unicode code points that correspond to ASCII, they get 1 byte, but everything else gets 2, 3, or 4 bytes. And why should anybody care about this? Well, I'll tell you why. Here's something that happened in Vancouver recently. This was a news item. They renamed a street in Vancouver. It used to be called Trudge Street. It's now called Shukmiamwasam Street. They changed the name of the street from that to this, Shemukwiamasam. It's in the language of the Musqueam First Nation. That is a whole string of very interesting Unicode code points, including the W floating up in the sky by itself, which is a modified letter small w. And it shouldn't surprise everybody that this is not working out very well. People are trying to update their address with the bank and the government, and all kinds of websites are not parsing this UTF-8 code properly, so people in Vancouver are having a number of issues. So you got to think about UTF-8 in your back-end systems, because all kinds of interesting characters are flowing into it. This year, Unicode 17.0 was released. I'm sure you'll be happy to know that it now supports the Seidetic, Tolong Siki, Berla Urfe, and Taiyao scripts. Finally. And when I talked to you about text 8 years ago, though, at this conference, Andrina and I played a trombone and French horn solo on stage for no particularly good reason, just so that I could segue into my complaint of 2017 that there was no trombone emoji. There was an emoji for the trumpet, the saxophone, no trombone emoji. And I closed that talk with a grand statement that I was going to fix this, and I would let you know how it goes. Well, guess what? It's here. Unicode 17.0 has a trombone emoji. I didn't have anything to do with it. There were a group of high school students from Maryland who actually wrote a proposal that took 6 years to work its way through the system, and they had to justify why a trombone emoji would be good and show you all the reasons why it would be distinctive. And sure enough, the Unicode Consortium has added these 8 new emoji in Unicode 17.0. You don't have it yet. Usually the new emoji are released in September, and it takes Apple until like the 0.2 release before we see them. But there's a trombone emoji coming, along with a landslide, an orca, whale, and a hairy creature. That will be a popular one there. All right. Given that I have a little bit more time, I wanted to update all those presentations, but I have this whole folder full of presentations I started but never finished. I thought now's my chance. Now's my chance to show you the beginning of several other presentations that I haven't finished. I feel very passionately about some topics. One is that we often see Canadian flags that are the wrong shape. I picked a very random gold medal ceremony from the Olympics, and I'm sure you'd agree with me that that Canadian flag is the wrong shape. It's a 3:2 aspect ratio. Canadian flags are actually 2:1. Well done, Sweden, silver, Finland, bronze, but the Canadian one is the wrong shape, which is really the takeaway message from that particular. Anyway, I could go on and on and on about that. Another one I wanted to do was that I think everybody in this business thinks that they are the only people that know how to wind up a cable properly, that everybody else is wrong. I always wanted to build a session where I would bring a whole bunch of people on stage and we would all talk about the way that we wind up cable and why you're doing it wrong. And I actually recruited a bunch of my friends there, and this video is just boring beyond belief, but every in this video is talking about how they're right and everybody else is wrong. But here we go. The exciting history of telephone numbers. Have you ever gotten onto a Wikipedia page and before you know it, you've spent about 5 hours drilling around through Wikipedia, learning all kinds of fantastic trivia and that you hope someday somebody else might be interested in? That happens to me a lot. Let's talk about telephone numbers. Here's a thrilling document, E.164 of the International Telecommunication Union. This defines how a telephone number works. We've got a country code, we got a national destination code, numbering plan areas, but I'm going to back up a little bit. Anybody know who that is? That's right. That's Alexander Graham Bell, the Canadian inventor of the telephone. That plaque is on a building in Paris, Ontario, where the first phone call was made from Brantford to Paris, not far from where I live. Let me tell you a little bit about Alexander Graham Bell. He was born in Edinburgh, 1847. I always thought his full name was Alexander Graham Bell, like Graham Bell was his last name. But his name was actually Alexander Bell when he was born. He did not have a middle name, and then at age 11, he went to his dad and said, I need to have a middle name. And they had a family friend named Alexander Graham. So from that point on, the kid was called Alexander Graham Bell. Isn't that incredible? No. Anyway, he was born in Edinburgh, moved with the family to Canada in the hopes that the air there would be better for him. Bell moved back and forth in his life many times between Brantford, Ontario, and Boston, where he taught at schools for the deaf and studied elocution and so on in Boston. And then he eventually retired to Bedeck, Nova Scotia. If you ever come to my house, we might go and take a look to the Brantford, to the telephone city, and we can visit the house where Alexander Graham Bell grew up in Brantford. Bell is probably the second most famous person from Brantford. Who's the first most famous person from Brantford? No, not me. I'm from London. Geez, I got a whole box of candy up here I would throw out if only somebody would shout out, Wayne Gretzky is from Brantford. Oh, candy, okay, Wayne Gretzky, yeah, I don't know who got that. Here's some candy. This is candy from Brantford. These are Maynard's Swedish berries, which are actually manufactured in Brantford. So I thought I'd bring a few of those over here. I'm inspired by Eric, who brought potato chips from Chicago, but he didn't bring Swedish potato chips from Chicago. I've brought Swedish berries from Brantford. I visited the plant where these are made. There's a big pipeline where I think petroleum comes in one side and Swedish berries go out the other side. Anyway, if you go to visit Brantford, Brantford is here. Paris is up there, the small town of Paris, Ontario, and that's where Bell made the first phone call, from Brantford to Paris. We aren't very creative with our names. I'm from London, Ontario. So if you visit Ontario, we have Brantford, we have Paris, London, Zurich. There's a whole bunch of interesting spots. But this is Bell's house. You can actually go and visit Bell's house. And I went there a few weeks ago. You can see an amazing array of stuff, like his lab, where he was actually building telephones. That one in the middle is a very early phone that contains a small vial of sulfuric acid to power the battery. So you had to be very careful when you were picking it up not to spill the phone on yourself. That item on the right, of course, is Bell's family ice cream maker. I thought that was kind of interesting. But this is my favorite part of the actual Bell homestead. For some reason, Alexander Graham Bell kept a stuffed duck-billed platypus on the dining room table. Bet you didn't know that. And then one day, he made the first useful telephone call from Brantford to Paris. Now, my American friends will dispute this. They will say that the first phone call was done in Boston, where Bell and his assistant Watson were in Boston. Bell had made a very early version of this phone and one day shouted out famously, "Come here, Mr. Watson, I need you." Watson heard that on the only other phone in the world and came to help him. But here's the thing, that was the same as shouting. They were in the same house. He could have just said, "Watson, come here, I need," and he didn't need a telephone. The guy was just in the next room. He could have come over. That does not count as a phone call. I'm sorry. Later on, Bell came back to Brantford and used the telegraph wires that went from Brantford to Paris. That's the building where the phone call came from. Bell called the telegraph company and said, "I have this experiment I want to do. Could you please put extra batteries just for today on the telegraph lines to make this work?" Bell was standing at the telegraph office in Brantford. Bell was in Paris. Bell's father was in Brantford. It was a one-way call. They tried a few things that Bell could not hear, and so of course, he did the only thing he could. He telegraphed some modifications back to the Brantford office, and they moved some wires and turned some dials. And after that, he heard successfully a short speech from his father 20 miles away in Paris, Ontario. First phone call. Later in life, Bell retired to Bedeque in Cape Breton in Nova Scotia and was heavily invested, believe it or not, in hydrofoils and in building the first airplane in Canada. And he died at age 75, and that night, all telephones in North America were silenced for 1 minute in his honor. His whole life, Bell refused to have a telephone in his office. He thought it would be distracting. Yeah, that right. All right, okay, let's talk about telephone numbers. Well, we used to not care about telephone numbers because you'd speak into your telephone and you would hope whoever was at the other end of this one wire happened to be listening, because that was it. There was no notion of numbers. Eventually, they started to build little switchboards like this that could connect any one of 6 telephones to any one of the other 6 telephones. Switchboards got more elaborate. Phones eventually acquired dials as well. Bell wanted everyone to say "hoi hoi" when you picked up the phone. Hoi hoi, hoi hoi, kind of like a nautical thing. Ahoy, ahoy, hoi. Do you know who argued with him about that and said, no, we shouldn't do that, we should say hello? Edison. Edison is the reason we say hello. Bell wanted everyone to say hoi hoi. I think that's better. Anyway, once dialing became possible, then phone numbers and area codes became possible. And here is your first map of area codes in North America in 1947. This is a neat website, linkmad.com, if you're curious about area codes. And one neat, interesting thing about area codes is that we were all dealing with a dial telephone that had a dial that actually had to spin like this. You could dial a 1 pretty quickly, but if you wanted to dial a 9 or a 0, it had to go, oh my God, it had to go all the way around. You had to wait for it all the way to come back. And to ease the load on the telephone switching system, the larger cities got area codes that were quicker to dial with the dial. So New York was 212. LA was 213. Chicago was 312. Newfoundland, 902. Nobody wants to call, oh my God, it's going to take forever to dial 902. Here are area codes in 1947, and here are area codes today. Florida went from 1 area code to 37 area codes in that time frame. And trivia, what is the area code? Now, I told some of you this, Joel, already, but this is a legitimate question. Can you tell me what the 3-digit area code is for the part of Florida where the Kennedy Space Center is? Because somebody went and requested a special area code when they were chopping them all up. What would be a good area code for a place where you're launching rockets? 321, that's right. Oh, and I got processed petroleum berries here for you. That's right. The area code for Cape Canaveral, Florida is 321, and that guy, Ozzy Osband, believe it or not, Ozzy Osband, is the guy that originated the 321 area code. But we're going to run out of these numbers someday. This is my Uncle George and our family construction business and the truck. And it had a 3-digit phone number out of it. You called 925 to get a hold of Heyman Construction back in the day. We're going to run out of phone numbers. I have a proposal to fix this. Some people say we could go to 4-digit area codes. And if you're a North American, I bet you never noticed, but there are no area codes where 9 is the 2nd digit. Those are reserved for the eventual expansion of phone numbers. If 9 is the 2nd thing you dial, then we have a longer phone number. Maybe we need 12-digit phone numbers. The International Telecommunication Union says that phone numbers must be 15 digits or less. Is that the solution? Well, I don't know. I look back at this. This is a map of country codes, all the country codes of the world, and they're kind of logical. All of South America is 5. Did you know that? All the country codes in South America all begin with 5. All the ones in Africa begin with 2. But why do we have to share one with the Americans? 1 is the country code for Canada and the United States. That's not fair. The only other 1-digit country code is 7, and it's shared between Russia and Kazakhstan. By the way, the highest country code is, anybody know? Oh, this will be good. Oh my God, I'll give you a whole box of candy if anybody can tell me the highest numbered country code. That's right, Uzbekistan, 998. That is the maximum country code. And nobody do. I have to eat all this candy myself now. But why do we have to share this country code with my American friends when clearly the first phone call was made in Canada between Brantford and Paris? I think they should just go get their own country code, okay? That would solve the problem from a Canadian perspective. Get the Americans to quit hogging country code 1. They can have 100 or something. Forget it. Believe it or not, I have more slides on this that I'm going to skip. Now, I want to talk about a couple other things. The road to success as an app developer. I have finally been able to put an app in the App Store, something I was not allowed to do as an Apple employee. I have an app called Tongue Light. And oh, now I don't know why the audio is not working here, but it actually plays sounds as well. People say you spent all this time at Apple. That's what you came up with? Yes, it is. Now, but let me tell you a story. I submitted that to App Review. It was promptly rejected because your app is primarily a flashlight app that duplicates the content and functionality of similar apps. Really? Apple does not want any more flashlight apps. I don't think this is a flashlight app at all. But you know what? It's in test flight. You want a copy? That concludes my app making career so far. I have a couple more ideas, but I was rejected for that one. If you didn't have time to get this, hit me up later. I'll fix you up. Kids love this one, by the way. Anyway, that's the end of my app making career. But I did learn quite a few things. I was very fortunate to present here all these times and at hundreds of other places. And I've learned a few things over 40 years. One is that presenting is a fantastic way to learn a topic. Tim showed us that with AI and encoding. I am the leading expert on Unicode in our entire family right at the moment because of the work I did on that. Is it working there, Eric? Yeah. Tap the screen to get to the settings. Wonderful way to learn about something is to agree to present on it at a conference in the future. That focuses your mind. You should save an old thing so you can get it out for show and tell once in a while. Like maybe the first computer you ever used, your cardboard computer from the 8th grade. I would tell kids today, if you've got an iPhone like this, when you're done with it, don't recycle it, put it in a drawer, and then get it out 30 years later so you can tell people, look how heavy these things were that we had to use. You had to plug a wire in. It only had 2 terabytes of memory. Can you remember when we only had terabytes? Because that's what we do in this business. We complain about it. Another thing to remember very much, is that the audience is on your side. Everybody wants you to be successful in your presentation. I used to worry early in my career that I would present on a topic and people would be in the audience challenging me. Well, what about this Microsoft thing? Or didn't you know that Google or Samsung does it this way? But you know what? Those people, they're not going to come to your talk. The people that come genuinely want you to succeed. And if something goes wrong, remember, they're on your side. It's completely okay to say, listen, we need to take a break, and I'll fix it. And they're all cheering for you to get back together. Eric remembers that one time he presented here when suddenly all the images, I think, in your keynote presentation had vanished for some mysterious reason. And you told us honestly about that, and that got everybody on your side. We were cheering for you to get through this presentation, and you did a fantastic job back then. I've done sessions where 2 minutes to go, and I'm going to do a very elaborate coding presentation, and my computer will not boot. That happened to me at the developer conference one time. But there's people around who want to help you. People want to see you succeed. So don't worry that you're going to get in trouble when you do a presentation. You got a room full of people who are cheering for you. I didn't know that at first. Bigger text. Nobody in the history of presentations has ever said, gosh, the text on that screen was too easy to read. Zoom, please learn how to do this. Please learn how to do this kind of thing. The audience loves it when you do this. If you can do this just to highlight some little thing in your presentation. I've done the most elaborate, long-winded coding presentations on highly technical topics, and at the end, people come up to me and say, Steve, that was a great presentation. Well, thank you. Well, I got a question. Oh, yeah? How did you make the screen zoom in and out like that? Like that's the only thing they remember. Figure that out. Also, the older you get, the more you're going to like that. And really, a feature I would like on my phone is something that every year on my birthday would make the text 1 point larger. Just don't even need to tell me. Just do it. No, my eyes are fine. I don't know what the problem is. Maybe think about pre-recording your demos. If you have some elaborate demos that you want to do, you can build them into the keynote presentation as movies. That's got a bunch of advantages. It's more predictable. People really don't want to watch you type. I know we all think of ourselves as fantastic typists. Nobody wants to watch you type on the screen. There's a wonderful tool, which I think is even Swedish, called ScreenFlow for capturing the screen and editing it. I use this all the time. This is great. Plus, bonus, if you've built recordings of your presentations into your keynote presentation, then in an emergency, you can do that keynote presentation on somebody else's computer, even if they don't have all your tools. Consider packing it all up like that. Bringing treats never hurts. People love it if you bring. Can't remember when you do these speaker evaluations that somebody was throwing candy at you. Just see if you can remember that. You don't need to be totally serious all the time. Okay. A lot of people at a conference are on a little vacation from their desk. Be sure to give them lots of great technical information, but you don't need to be completely serious all the time. If you think it will help to have a photo of Alexander Graham Bell's platypus on your slide, go right ahead. And I just want to wrap up with what I think is the absolute best reason to present, and I'm sure my fellow presenters who've all done an amazing job this week would agree that the best reason to present is for the great feeling of relief when it's over. Thank you.